for, then you can believe that Christ walked on the water or whatever you want to, whatever's been told. Rationality, even our faith, is based on things we've heard people say, that give us what faith we have. In other words, we've been given a story about Jesus Christ, and like a lot of people are, taken by it, and it makes them feel better about existence, and so there's a very important element about faith, but it comes from a rationality that's not complete. In other words, our thinking, and it all comes from number. That's the foundation of our thinking, as far as rationality is concerned. Ratios, that's what number is. It's these ratios between these signs. But the statement is that I see all the problems we have in the world, with politicians and all that, is that we're not being rational. That there's something wrong with the way we think. And we think with language. Language is a vehicle of thought. It's limited to thought. That's why language has been changing from ancient times up until the present. It's gradually changed by these scientific things, this rationality that takes over on faith, that which has happened in the last 2,000 years. So this is a problem with human beings in terms of rationality, and that by improving their rationality, it can actually enhance their ability to have faith.
Now, by faith, do you mean the faith in something that they've been taught, or the faith in something they've discovered through their own experience?
Well, we have to nail this thing down about 2 + 2 = 4. Like what I mentioned was that just about every country in the world, no matter how primitive or how sophisticated, they all agree on that principle, arithmetic, This is something that they can really have faith in, is that rationality.
Right.
And it's actually that belief that our language is rational, that therefore we are thinking in a rational way. But our language is not rational because it starts out with Aleph, the fool, this element of reversal. That's what Aleph is all about, I mark it with this horseshoe upside down with a line through it. Well, it's no different than the letter A, Aleph. And it can either count or not count, like 0 and 1. This can count and that don't count.
Kind of the joker in the deck.
Yeah, right.
So-
So that
so-
is the joker, the fool.
We started off with an assumption, never noticing that we made the assumption at the very beginning, and then we've gone so far beyond that.
Right,
that-
we've lost sight of it.
Yeah, the assumption is
The
never
most simple
discovered.
thing is lost sight of. The Greeks had this god they called Janus. Have you ever heard of Janus? It's that thing that guy facing both ways. He's watching out behind, because that is the incarnation of retrosity. Janus. And Janus is like, Janus and Aleph are really partners,
So the fool fits into all of this somewhere.
Oh yeah, and you can take in even the most primitive cultures. It's all there if you really listen to what they're saying. We can look at it as mumbo jumbo or bullshit, but it's really just as rational as what we're saying.
So this is the trickster in the Native American culture.
Yeah.
And in other cultures as well. The trickster shows up and can play
If you can
a
have
dual
more,
role.
if you can have more faith in your thinking, in other words, if you can improve your rationality, it actually enhances your faith in things, especially in things about magic, because that's where the science and all this, intellectual thing has been trampling on magic. Magic was that Jesus Christ was a happening of magic. You know what I mean? That's why we remember this guy from 2,000 years ago. He's known all over the world. You know what I mean? Maybe he's spoken with a little bit different word. You know what I mean? But Krishna Christ is an incarnation. Vishnu, Krishna, and Shiva is the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer. And the preserver or the savior is right in between.
Yes.
And the savior, that mechanism of reciprocity of what saves right and left or up and down or whatever, you know what I mean? That is the foundation of a rational thought. And that is the thing that the mathematician or the rationalist is ignored. The most simple thing is what he's ignored.
Could you even refer to that thing as the connecting principle between
Yeah.
the other
Sure,
two?
sure.
So in a sense, that's a huge thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe that's the hugest thing, is the connecting principle.
This is what the Hindus, in other words, when they put out these calendars, now where in the hell they got it, who knows, you know what I mean? Outer space, you know what I mean? We don't know, but all of a sudden they pop up with the most sophisticated language that we've ever known, you know what I mean? And then went all through this trip through these alphabets to get back to this, to understand this. But the rationale is there. It's that triangle and square. 3 times 4 is 12, you know what I mean? And you'll notice in this that these 4-digit palindromes, like 18 and 81, 36 and 63, 24 and 42, or 27 and 72, or 45 and 54, they lie in quad. In this whole array of all these numbers, you know what I mean? They only lie in those 4 axes, And as far as positive and negative numbers this way and that way, is like 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's symmetry. And symmetry is in here. And symmetry is that thing that makes the rational, And paradox comes from the same source. Paradox and symmetry all come from the mechanism of reciprocity.
And you call this the Auric key.
The Auric key, or numeronomy. Numeronomy is a law of number, how to be rational about the sequence of number. The sequence of number does have a rational meaning that we can understand if it's pointed out to us. And that's what they was doing. They was pointing it out to us 7,000 years ago, and given these things about their calendar, the 2 calendars, and how they fit together, and how they relate to the number 1296 or 36 squared, So what I call the Om wheel is just this Om, you know what I mean? That's carried out 60 revolutions, and it can relate to the base 60 of the whatever Babylonians, and all that. But that's where 12, 72, 360, and all that. These numbers all click in this pattern. This opposition and a trine, And then you have this point, 49.5, 49 and 50, right across is between 99, 108 and 99, because 108 is just 99 plus 9 is 108. See? 99 is... So it's a rational picture of the patterns that go on in number that have been neglected because mathematicians use number without knowing a damn thing about it.
And what do you think would happen if they all suddenly got it?
Well, they won't all of a sudden get it, you know what I mean? It'll be many years before any of this will even mean anything to the scholastic audience.
And when it does begin to mean something,
Well, and we'll
how will
just
it
become a little
affect
more
us?
rational. I mean, if it will help us out of this impasse of the atomic thing, you know, or whatever. If there's any hope for the human race, you know what I mean, if we want to preserve it any longer than this impending apocalypse, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
then it will only be through this rationality that's been given to us from 7,000 years ago that's been ignored.
It's interesting that if I think of this thing as the connecting principle, the thing that you're speaking of,
Good enough.
that'd be a good start right there, wouldn't it, in terms of helping mankind
Yeah.
come together
Yeah,
and unify, because that is connecting.
yeah.
And that
That's what separates
Exactly
at,
how.
at the table, you know, of you know, the politicians. You know, what separates us is irrationality in our thinking, in our language.
And that
We
binary
believe in
thinking.
language as it is. We think it's good enough to do the right kind of thinking, and it's not. Language has a serious problem, you know, and if you observe that problem and deal with it, then you can become a little more rational. And consequently, have a little more real faith. Faith and magic, because
yeah,
the thing is, the college, you know, you don't find anybody in there believing that Christ walked on the water. You know what I mean? Science says that's bullshit. You know what I mean? So it's that conspiracy, the rational, what they think they're being rational. You know, they're just proliferating that thing. You know.
I see. Yeah, I see.
Or levitation,
Yeah.
or
Wow.
numerous other things that.
You know, like I haven't mentioned anything about the occult, because if you do, in most audiences, they put you down as a crank right away, because that's bullshit. They've never seen any magic, and so therefore magic doesn't exist.
And then they're unable to hear you.
So I try not to mention any of my occult experience, because it would turn people off automatically.
Yeah, it does seem to have that effect to large audiences.
Yeah.
Well, that's, you know, that's what I was alluding to and trying to touch a little bit upon, you know, talking about crystals and, you know, prescribed meaning. And, you know, so what is real and what's not real? I mean, it comes into a place of, you know, where does, you know, reality, what is reality and truth, you know, have to do with that which is, you know, imagined or has prescribed meaning that's not based in any kind of rational logic. So, can you speak to that? I mean, do you feel like speaking to any of that at all?
I thought it was, but.
Well, in terms of the occult.
Well, let me refer to an experience I had. This was, I married a lady in Canada in the 60s. And we took a trip to this country, and we went to LA, and we went to Pacific Palisades and visited the lake shrine, Paramahansa.
Yogananda's.
Yogananda, yeah. And like we was walking around, there's a path around the lake that's pebbles that was been sent. In other words, people from all over the world have sent him little rocks and stuff, and they're sprinkled around this path. So you're walking on the world going around there, right? So at one point there's this shrine. It's like, you know, most like these shrines, it's like an upside down horseshoe with a figure in there, you know, a saint or whatever, you know what I mean? And so we get to this point, we stop walking and looking at this guy in a real white robe, or, you know, like a toga or whatever you want to call it, you know, a wraparound thing, you know, and with a turban, you know, and I figure, well, it's just a local nut, you know what I mean? It's visiting. So I had this Binox camera, so I took it out, and I got his picture. And as he turned around, in other words, he was facing me when I took the picture. Click,
Yes.
you know what I mean? I put the camera back in my pocket, you know, and he turned back around, never said nothing. But I got a pretty good idea of what he looked like, you know. So went back to Canada, sent the pictures and get them developed. The shrine was there, but the guy wasn't. So this kind of blew me away, you know, because we both saw this guy, you know. The camera didn't see him, you know. So then, of course, when I first read the autobiography of yoga, Paramahansa Yogananda, Sri Yanavada Yukshivar, there's his picture. This is the guy I saw, his guru.
Yogananda's.
Yeah, Yogananda. And there's other occult things about Yogananda that are matter of record. The coroner, after a few days, he checked the body out and everything. There was no sign of any deterioration of the body. It was in preservation, you know. This was days, and they sent it back to India, you know. But the coroner of Los Angeles went on record saying that he had never seen anything like that in his whole career as a coroner undertaker. So there's all kinds of things there, you know, but those are still words, you know what I mean? You don't know, you know, you know, it could be lies, you know what I mean? I could be lying about saying I saw this guy, you know what I mean? I'm not, you know what I mean? But I would be branded a nut, you know what I mean, if I said this in any other place.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this is a fundamental problem with language,
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So if they could go step by step and understand what's here in these pages, in other words, this is all pages that refer, you know, to these principles that's going on. There's your retrograde fugue. That's the crab cannon there. So anyway, you see that pattern?
Love 'em, yes.
Yeah. So he turns around midway and goes reverse. You know? And that really was Bach. You know, I mean, that's the most incredible piece of music that I've ever heard. I mean, you know, piece of music plays the same frontwards and backwards. You know, how in the hell did he ever manage to score that? You know, I mean, in an octave and so forth.
And this is what you graphed out with the
Yeah.
numbers.
Well, I got Christian Landry. I asked him if he could put it in the form of notation, you know, in modern musical notation, and which was a grid. There was 22, 144. Give the whole length of this in the octave. You know. So that's what happened. So it was just like the synchrograph, you know, what it is. It's a number and the click of number and geometry, you know, by 12 is, you know, 3 and 4, the triangle and the square, the foundation. If you use that as a foundation of number, you get that holatomic sequence, those 8 holotomes, you know, that are all the minimal sums with a maximum amount of divisors, you know. And how you do that is you take 12 and you multiply it, you multiplex it through the primes, the 7 primes, and you get the sequence of numbers which are the minimal sums with the maximum amount of divisors. Totally rational sequence. And the guy that done the Encyclopedia of Integer Sequences was Neil Sloan, Bell AT&T Labs. And I sent him the whole atomic sequence, and he wrote back and he said, "Isn't that just a variant of consecutive primes?" And I wrote back and told him, I said, "a very important variant, you know, because I mentioned this about it." And then he finally agreed that it was a valid sequence. I mean, it could be entered, but he didn't put it in his book. It's in his database, but not in his fucking book. He didn't have enough faith in it. He didn't understand it well enough, you know what I mean? If he read 2,000 of my words, you know what I mean, he would zero right in and follow it where it goes, you know what I mean? Because if you take the few basic elements of this, and anyone with a rational mind that has a cursory understanding of number will automatically get right into it because they'll see the rationality of it. That sequence of minimal sums, you know, sets up that pattern, you know, what I mean, that is actually the archetypal pattern, you know, that all these other wheels click into. Here's one. This is a caduceus catalog. You know, the caduceus is the medical thing, you know, about the serpents and the staff.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's the caduceus
That's-
catalog.
Look at that.
But well, like I got over 100 pounds of paper over there, and that doesn't count all of the stuff I burned, you know what I mean? That is reduced to just what I figured is really critical, on down the road critical, you know what I mean? Because it's just too much information involved, too much complication and all that to be reduced down into just this many pages, you know. It represents, you know, 40 or 50 years of study, you know, because it was that long ago that I heard that the distribution of prime numbers was chaotic. It was irrational, that the mathematical community considered there was no order there. One of the leading mathematicians, Harvard mathematician, went on record in Omni magazine in 1981, I think it was, that the study of prime numbers is a waste of time. You know, meaning that he studied it and he tried to make sense of it and he never could. So therefore, you might as well forget it because he's the smartest fucker in the world.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And that was your challenge. I mean, that's where you took it. That's where you
because
took it up.
I
Right
say,
there.
how could this be? This
That
is a
sparked
source
you.
of rationality. Number is the source of our reasoning. How could it be that this is irrational? And therefore, nothing is rational. So then I started looking for what in the hell rational was, you know. And I found it in a number, you know. And if you get, you know, off into mathematics, you're already lost because you don't even understand what number is, and that's the foundation of your study.
It seems like what I'm hearing here too is telling me that all of this study of numbers that you've been doing and all of the beautiful patterns that you've discovered is the proof of the interrelationship of everything that exists in all the multiple, many forms
yeah.
of relationship.
When you say everything, it's like the word all, and like the word number one is like the word all. And like it's irrational because all, we don't know nothing about all, you know what I mean? That's beyond the finite. We're only interested in what's finite, which is in a box or a jug or a jar or a package or a dish or whatever, the finite amount, and then it becomes rational. But if we say all, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
You know? So mathematicians still use it. They say an infinite number of ways to do this and that. Infinite numbers, that's a contradiction of terms.
That's, I never thought of
Number's
that.
got to
It's
be
true,
rational.
isn't
It's
it?
got to be, you know, a certain number, 36 or something. It's got to, you know, to relate to the other numbers, become rational.
Would you call that a closed system?
Yeah,
A
closed
contained
system. Yeah,
system.
finite. So they don't really understand the difference between the word finite and infinite, you know.
Right.
Because infinite, that's, don't concern yourself with it.
There's no system.
That's
that keeps
beyond the
going.
stars,
Right.
and we don't know nothing about that yet. You know, so, but rationale can lead us at least out of this irrationality that we have, that we've inherited through language, which has this flaw in the foundation of language. The flaw we call aleph.
The flaw we call what?
Aleph, the
Aleph,
fool.
yes, the
yeah,
fool.
the fool is there. In other words, he's in there in your brain, you know what I mean, and he confuses you, you know what I mean?
You have any ideas about pure language?
ideal syntax.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's we're working towards a more ideal syntax. I don't know if there'd be completely ideal syntax, but we can be more rational. You know, because I see this pattern in numbers as syntax, and this is a model for syntax. This is the model, this is a map that nature behaves to, because we've interpreted nature from this. You know, our understanding of this so far. you
Yes,
know.
in other words, nature's giving it to us.
Yeah.
Nature's communicating directly with
Yeah,
us all the time.
Right. And nature is one fantastic impossibility, but there it is. It's magic.